is Lauren and welcome to the Theoretical YouTube channel, a safe haven for every Hogwarts house, although bonus points if you're a Ravenclaw. Or I guess Slytherin, but you know, Kai's not in this video, so... Anyway, did you guys see that Pottermore died? Or like became a phoenix and was reborn as the Wizarding World website? I'm very shaken by this ordeal. Although really it's just a rebranding anyway, since all the functions and features are virtually the same. They've still got content, quizzes, a Patronus test, all of J.K. Rowling's archived writings, and of course, the Hogwarts sorting quiz. Which really, besides some new graphics and augmented reality stuff on the app, is pretty much the same as Pottermore's. But with all these changes to our dearly departed Pottermore, it really got me thinking about the Hogwarts sorting system, and how it's perceived by some fans as flawed in many ways, which like, yeah it is. But my issue isn't with splitting characters onto different life paths at age 11, or how the reputations of some houses suffer, or even how merchandise is sold unevenly to fans. No, my problem with the sorting process is that we have no idea how it actually works. And therefore, it's pretty much impossible to write a real-world quiz to mimic a Magic Hat's methods. But I think I found a solution. Never been more relieved in my life. So what exactly is the Hogwarts sorting quiz, and why has everyone and their grandmother inevitably taken it? Well, in case you've been raised by wolves for the last 2 decades, Hogwarts is the school from Harry Potter, and its characters are sorted into 4 houses. Never mind, even wolves know this stuff. Where the heck have you been? There's Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. And each house supposedly represents a virtue in its members that the founder valued. Gryffindors are brave, Ravenclaws are smart, Hufflepuffs are kind, and Slytherins are shrewd? Whatever that means. It's the Hufflepuff way to say evil and still sell merchandise. When students arrive at Hogwarts, they go through sort of an aptitude test called the sorting ceremony, where they try on a hat, it reads their soul, and places them in a house. Gryffindor! Depending on who you ask, the hat either places you based on the attribute you exhibit the most, value the most, will grow into, or it's genetic.
Ha! Another Weasley.
But you're all wrong. I'll get there in a minute, but first off, why do so many fans care about their Hogwarts house? And this isn't a criticism, I love Hogwarts houses. I love the concepts, the community, the merchandise, all those things. I'm making this video because I think Hogwarts houses get a bad rap sometimes for being overly simplistic, because they're really not. But on the other hand, all the houses take the same classes and learn the same magic. Excluding reputations or family ties, logically there is no reason to prefer one house over another. Especially in the real world, where fans don't even go to the school, hang out in the dormitory, or wear the real uniforms. So why is it so important to know your Hogwarts house? Why have I taken so many Hogwarts quizzes just to figure out that I'm still a Ravenclaw and therefore don't have to buy all new merchandise? Well, because it's a personality test, and humans love their personality tests. I was going to make an argument that Hogwarts sorting was single-handedly responsible for all those BuzzFeed quizzes. Like, host a pasta party and we'll tell you what movie you should watch, which is 100% an actual quiz I saw. I got Legally Blonde, which is interesting because I actually really do enjoy that movie. But back to important stuff. Hogwarts quizzes may have popularized these trends like, what's my faction, who's my godly parent, or what element can I bend? But for some perspective, the Myers-Briggs personality indicator was being used in World War II to evaluate women entering the workforce. Employers still use this thing today. I've had random people come up and feel compelled to tell me that they're an ENFJ. You know, probably because they're an ENFJ. Look it up. What I'm trying to say is that there are hundreds of these personality tests that our society feels compelled to justify. That's why horoscopes are such a big thing to people who aren't me. There's definitely more science behind some of these tests, but in the end, they all have the same purpose. Some part of us just wants to be told who we are and why. And that is so much more true for Harry Potter's target audience. Teens and tweens. There was a psychologist named Erik Erikson, I swear I'm not making this up, and one of his big ideas is that for every stage of life, we have a crisis. For babies, it's trust versus mistrust. In other words, they're trying to figure out what is true about the world that they're born into. Does mom really disappear during the game of peekaboo? For people entering middle age, it's the idea of generativity or stagnation. Basically, is leading a stable life boring? But for adolescents, or anyone with pimples, Erickson argues that their crisis is between ego identity and role confusion. In other words, who am I compared to everyone else, and why isn't my clique as cool as theirs? Which makes sense, right? This is basically the plot to every high school movie. Are you in cheerleading or glee club, basketball or theater, a freak or a geek, plastic or mathlete, a Gryffindor or a Slytherin? Anyone old enough to go to Hogwarts is theoretically already going through a crisis of identity. So when a magic hat reads your soul and tells you that you're brave or smart or whatever, it's so easy to just trust it.
Slytherin!
You're only 11 years old and you've just been handed something in common with 25% of your entire school. That's awesome. But here's the thing, the Sorting Hat lied. Those house traits that we print on t-shirts and lanyards and wear around our lives don't actually mean anything other than lyrics in the Hat's song. If Gryffindors were really brave, then the biggest coward in the series wouldn't be a Gryffindor. If they were chivalrous, then Fred and George's irreverent behavior would have had them expelled in the first year. If Ravenclaws were so intelligent, then Gilderoy Lockhart wouldn't have been the worst teacher at Hogwarts, and Quirrell wouldn't have been so easily tricked by Voldemort. If they were so great at school, then Hermione wouldn't be top of her class. If they truly had wit beyond measure, then Luna wouldn't necessarily believe everything her father tells her. And the Sorting Hat doesn't even know what to say about the other two houses. It certainly isn't consistent. If Slytherins have the purest ancestry, then why are Umbridge, Snape, and Voldemort all half-bloods? But if they're so ambitious, then why do the majority of them end up serving someone else? Don't they have any goals of their own? And if they're shrewd or cunning, Crabbe and Goyle certainly wouldn't have made the cut. And poor Hufflepuffs. If they're such hard workers, then why do they always place so low in the House Cup? If they were just and loyal, then Ernie Macmillan wouldn't have led a smear campaign against Harry on a whim. And the whole house wouldn't have turned against a fellow student. Twice. And if they were sweet, then Zechariah Smith wouldn't be such a jerk. And one year, the Hat pretty much just calls them anybody who doesn't fit into a house I already described. So then, are these all incorrect sortings for these characters? Should Hermione actually be a Ravenclaw or Pettigrew a Slytherin? Well, not according to J.K. Rowling. In interviews and previously on Pottermore, she writes, "On those occasions when Slytherins behave altruistically or selflessly, when Ravenclaws flunk all their exams, when Hufflepuffs prove lazy yet academically gifted, and when Gryffindors exhibit cowardice, the Hat steadfastly backs its original decision. On balance, however, the Hat has made remarkably few errors of judgment over the many centuries it has been at work." I don't think the message could be any clearer. The sorting ceremony has nothing to do with being smart, brave, kind, or cunning. It just appears that way. And that's where so many online sorting tests fail to replicate the Sorting Hat's results. They're based on false information. So what's really going on here? Well, we do know two things. Number one, that the Sorting Hat is in fact making valid placements. And number two, they're based on something inside the personality or the mind of the person being sorted. Basically, it isn't random and it isn't choice. So now I want to talk about how Hogwarts houses have pretty much infiltrated every other fandom in existence. Just like people sorting themselves, it's pretty much impossible to avoid people sorting other fictional characters. Disney characters, Marvel superheroes, random literary figures, The Good Place, Game of Thrones, SpongeBob, Narnia, Yeah, hold on, we kinda made a video like that on this channel a couple years ago. Wow, this trend really is inescapable. But the thing is, it almost always works. Over and over again, we find ourselves saying, oh my gosh, that fits. But you know, it's hardly ever because we think a character is brave, because more often than not, they're all brave in some capacity. Something else just feels right about Merida as a Gryffindor or Elphaba as a Ravenclaw. And here's where I bring everything back to personality tests, and one of the oldest ones we know about. The 4 temperaments, or Humorism, is an ancient personality indicator that splits people into 4 types. Sound familiar? What's not as familiar is that supposedly each of the personalities is based on an excess of a different human bodily fluid, or humor, but I think we can disregard that part. The first personality type is called or blood, and it's described as being lively, carefree, impulsive, and adventurous. Wonder what that reminds me of. The second one is phlegmatic, or phlegm. They're the more sensitive, loyal, loving, conflict-mediating healer types. The third is choleric with yellow bile, which sounds disgusting. They're described as analytical, not necessarily friendly, but deep thinking and good at what they do. The last temperament is called melancholic and is derived from an excess of black bile. Blech. They're not very adventurous, but very logical and like a lot of structure in their lives. And if that's not a great description of each of the Hogwarts houses, then I don't have an excess of black bile. That sounded better when I wrote it. Anyway, yeah, is this what the Sorting Hat uses to separate students? I think you could make a great case that we have solved the problem right here. But I don't want to settle down just yet, because while I really do like this answer, it still requires students to fit into very specific boxes that are more aligned to characters than real people. And if we want to actually adapt a true sorting quiz for the real world, then we're going to need a more precise way to accurately measure someone's personality. And I think I have an even simpler way to break this down. And this time without any ancient fluid dissection. No, this is entirely my own method for sorting people into Hogwarts houses and for explaining why certain conflicts happen between people in different houses. I call it the Hogwarts quadrilateral, and it looks like this, because I know my Punnett squares. First of all, what the heck are you even looking at? How does this thing work? Like I said, it functions exactly like a Punnett square from biology class. Each box is the intersection of 2 binary values. One side is dedicated to the difference between being proactive and reactive, while the other covers if you're self-motivated or a team player. What do I mean by those terms? Let's start with motivation. Obviously, someone can be both self-motivated and work well with others, but what I'm trying to judge here is which value drives the person the furthest. In my mind, Ravenclaws and Slytherins are the most likely to get by on their own personal goals and aspirations. Maybe you'd call it ambition or faith and persistence, but either way, they don't necessarily need someone pushing them all the time. Whereas Gryffindors and Hufflepuffs do. In fact, without a reason to serve others, they can struggle to find a purpose at all. And not only are they more likely to help someone in need, but also accept help themselves. In other words, they're genuinely people. They work better with someone by their side. So what's the difference between these pairs? Why aren't there just 2 houses? I've called the second factor a proactive versus reactive response to stimulus, or I guess you could say it's kind of like being a leader or a follower. It's what Gryffindors and Slytherins have in common, and therefore why they butt heads so often. They both feel an obligation to take over situations themselves. They like being in charge. They like to tackle things head on, whereas Hufflepuffs and Ravenclaws might not. They're more likely to take a step back from a situation. I don't mean they won't handle it, but they're more likely to be cautious about it. Or they'll assume a more complementary role behind a better leader. They're more like sidekicks than full-blown stereotypical protagonists. But obviously, not all the time. I'm just saying, Cedric deferred to Harry that night in the graveyard, even though he was older and more experienced. One more interesting note is that when you fill out the diagram, you find that Gryffindors are directly opposite of Ravenclaws. Maybe I'm crazy here, but doesn't that make a lot of sense? That the logical, structured thinkers would constantly be at odds with the reckless, impulsive adventurers? And I'm a pretty solid Ravenclaw. I mean, I've taken many tests and pretty much always gotten that result. Also, it's where I most identify. Also, I co-produce a YouTube channel mainly based on Harry Potter fan theories. I think Ravenclaw fits pretty well. Anyway, in my own life, the people that I struggle the most to understand really are Gryffindors. We just approach life totally differently. But is this what the Sorting Hat takes into account, or is it more likely the 4 temperaments thing? Either way, it's abundantly clear what's wrong with your typical Hogwarts sorting quiz. They just never test the right things because the book never reveals how it's really done. And maybe that's why the Pottermore sorting quiz was always seen as pretty accurate. The questions had nothing to do with the stated house attributes. Can J.K. Rowling really just see into our souls? But in the end, it doesn't matter what story the Sorting Hat tells. Let the characters go on thinking they're brave, smart, cunning, or kind. Because they are, and if that's the trait that they choose to bring out, that's fine. Maybe the Sorting Hat really just values those things himself and wants to encourage them in the students. But realistically, without a magic hat to tell us where to go, and when we have to figure out a way to realistically place ourselves, maybe this is how Hogwarts sorting should work. So, what's your Hogwarts house? Because realistically, the best we can do at this point is free choice. I mean, I have my own Hogwarts sorting quiz that I've created in the last year using concepts from this video. And I'd offer to make it public, but currently it has to be taken on paper and graded by hand, so that's kind of difficult, you know? Anyway, what did you think of today's video? I'm personally really proud of where we ended up. We got some history, a little psychology, and a whole lot of Harry Potter, which if you ask me is the best combination. If you also enjoyed it, you can head down to the buttons located right here to like and comment if you haven't already. You could also follow us on Twitter at Theoria_Central to join an elite club of people who actually care about us. Like Nicole at Nicole in Oregon. Shout out to you, thanks for following. Anyway, that's everything I can fit into a reasonably lengthed video about Hogwarts houses. Maybe I should do some of my actual homework now. So I guess thanks for watching. Ravenclaw is better than Slytherin, and I'll see you later.
Better be Gryffindor!